Welcome to RFI's Banking Uncovered, the podcast going behind the industry PR, the media spin, the product awards, and the investor reports to look at what's really going on in the customer data, and to ask global thought leaders about their thoughts and views on the future of banking and payments.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Donohue. I'm the founder of iSky Research, more recently the managing director of iSky at RFI, and today your host for Banking Uncovered. And it's an absolute delight to be here in Washington, DC with Carey Kyler, who is at AARP. Thanks for joining us.
Delighted to be here. I'm glad that we are having nice weather for you today.
That's
fantastic. Rare for DC in June, so.
Couldn't have asked for more.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it is. So you're the Senior Director of Consumer Insights at AARP. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that AARP does, and in particular your role?
Yeah, of course. So AARP is the largest social mission organization in the United States, and we focus on needs of people that are over the age of 50, and making sure that they can live as they choose as they age. So it's a fantastic social mission. Now, where I sit, I'm going to give a little tweak on what you said, is AARP Services Incorporated. So we are a separate division that focuses on those commercial relationships. So we're the for-profit leg, actually, of AARP. And you know those discounts that people get, like Denny's or United Healthcare or New York Life, those all come out of our division. So we manage those commercial relationships to kind of keep the separation of church and state between the nonprofit and the for-profit. My role in research and insights is understanding what people want, what the habits are, what the practices, what the trends are, so that we can deliver a really spectacular member experience.
Fantastic. Yeah. Excellent work. Okay, so we've spent years talking about getting older consumers online. Mm-hmm. And do you think we're now at a point where the bigger challenge is building confidence and trust rather than driving adoption?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think, I don't love this term, but old tapes, it's kind of old tapes. I used to work in television. It's old tapes that people that are older aren't online. They are. We know that 90% of people over 50 have a cell phone. We know that 99% of people over 50 have at least one connected device. And the average is actually seven connected devices, and that's almost doubled in the past 9 years. So people are absolutely online. And again, the other thing is, if you think about it, Gen X is now 46 to 61 years old. Yep. And this is a generation, I'm in it, right? Thank you. We had 1 foot in the physical world and 1 foot in the digital world, so we've grown up with it. Yeah. Millennials are turning 50 and start to turn 50 in 5 years. Boomers are also very digitally savvy and online. And then also we've got our silent generation folks who are also using digital properties. So I think the whole conversation around just getting them online is old news. They're on. Yeah. They're on. And the pandemic really did accelerate that, right? People started using QR codes. They started using telehealth. They started communicating with people more. There were better platforms to do that. So yes. So that's the first half of your question. The second half of your question around trust is so interesting to me, Mark. I've been doing tons of reading around this trust issue. So look at consumer confidence. Mm-hmm. It has been plummeting really since January of this year. If you look at it, it goes down almost every single month. We're about at the levels where we were during the pandemic, right? So consumer confidence is down, trust in most institutions, government, a lot of companies, the media certainly, it's down. I feel, if I can plug, I feel really fortunate to work for AARP. Amongst our members, our trust is actually really, really high because we're out there and we're fighting for them and advocating for them, right? So if you think about companies, right, ease of use and getting them online is just kind of table stakes, right? Trust is the unlock. Getting them to trust you as an organization, particularly with things like finance, that is so important and so much risk associated with it. Yeah. So yeah, the focus, yes, get the online experience right, but trust is really where you begin to unlock those relationships and build the loyalty.
Yeah. So let's delve into that finance space. Mm-hmm. What do you think that financial institutions are misunderstanding most today about older consumers in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to what they do right or wrong, but I can tell you what I've seen generally in the market. when people address older adults. I think the first thing is understanding that it's a really, really vast market, right? So 50 to 100 is humongous. You and I are sitting in the middle of that, and we're probably different from people that are a little younger than us, and certainly different than people that are 100 or more. So understanding that age is not really enough, it's not enough of a nuance to really understand the market. I think understanding how big the market is, 125 million people today, right? Give or take, right? But 125 million people. And when you look at that, we just actually recently dropped our longevity economy report. It's a $12.5 trillion market. And there's a lot of variability within that. As I was saying, some people that are financially very well off, some people that are struggling. So understanding that variability across the market. But the fact is that if the 50 plus economy were an economy, we'd be the third largest in the world after the US and China.
Wow.
It's enormous. And so many companies, financial companies included, don't necessarily understand the magnitude of this market. In the next 20 years, 50 plus is going to be the largest component of the adult market. This is not a niche, right? This is going to be the market. And people kind of assume that, oh, they're loyal, they've made their choices, they're done. We're going to focus on this younger market. Well, first of all, it's going to be the largest part of the market. So, that's not a great idea. You need a 50 plus strategy. But also, that whole loyalty piece, yes, it's there, but it's not set in stone. Like our research is showing that people will change brands. So I think there's kind of this tendency to kind of ignore and be like, they're done. Let's focus on the, people that are coming up and coming into the market. But it's just so much easier to, like years ago, let's say 40 years ago, it was really hard to switch brands for anything, right? It was a lot of work. Right? You'd have to go to the library or talk to some friends or go to the store, make a bunch of phone calls. Now you can do it online. And AARP research shows that 90% of people over 50 are researching products online. So it's much easier, I think, for people to explore new options if they're not happy with the ones that they have. So I think to shorthand that, it's a very vast market within. Segmenting by age is not enough, understanding the variability, understanding that they're online, and understanding that you still can attract them even when they're over 50.
And so knowing that they're getting more online, and the technology is seemingly working pretty well,
Yeah.
What do you think the behavioural or emotional barriers are to then having greater adoption?
Yeah, so, one of my favorite statistics is that people in general, in their heads, view themselves as about 12 to 15 years younger than they actually are. Because we're fabulous, right? Like, oh, I'm not that 50, I'm not that 60, right? So in their heads, people are viewing themselves as younger. So one of the barriers that I see is that people who are creating communications to connect with people don't always recognize that. You might have somebody who thinks, oh, I'm targeting 50, and they use a 70-year-old in the advertisement, but the 50-year-old views themselves as 40. So let's start there, right? That said, even though we all think we're 15 years younger, we're not actually 15 years younger, right? There are things that can be done in a design for all approach that can attract and accommodate for things that an older consumer might need, such as visible fonts on the website, right? Elegant UX that you don't need 7 clicks to get to what you want. I can't tell you the number of things that I've seen that are targeted to older people, and it's like, tiny white font with a light blue background. It's really hard to read. Thinking also about there might be people who might have accommodations they need for either low sight or maybe they're hard of hearing. Interesting story. I mean, everybody's guilty of this, right? So interesting story. We were doing some research on my team and we were doing a survey and we had a 92-year-old woman who was taking our survey and she was actually incredibly tech savvy. I mean, my own mom is 91 and she's like e-commerce and doing everything, right? So, but this woman that was in our survey group was 92 and tech savvy, and she actually wrote in our verbatims, hey, this was great, but you had this exercise. It was a card sort, like you had to move things around. And on her mobile phone, because she was on her mobile phone, not her desktop, she says, really hard, I have arthritis. So that gave us pause, right? Like we're even capable of being, okay, so we need to rethink about how do we create these, kind of cool, engaging research interfaces that also can make sure that we are accommodating. And you can do that without alienating other people. So I know I'm going on and on, but let me give you one more example. So think about even in the analog or the physical world, right? So if you think about design for all, curb cuts in the sidewalk, great for wheelchairs, right?
Right.
Also really good for strollers. So there are things that can be done, like a larger font or an easy, elegant UX. It's not going to alienate a younger user, but it will welcome in an older user.
I want to come back to usability in just a moment. But if we go back to trust and confidence, do you think that financial institutions in particular are striking the balance, or they're a little bit too focused on usability, maybe not as much on trust and confidence? Or how do you see that balance playing out?
Yeah, and again, I don't know that I'm really qualified to talk about the financial institutions in particular, but I do think that there's been so much focus on usability, just kind of assuming that people don't know how to use things, and they do. Again, it's table stakes, right? So, and when you're talking about something like finance or something that has a large, I think a risk associated with it, or a lot more variables, that trust becomes increasingly important, right? Again, with trust falling across the board, if I'm going to trust you to manage my banking or my financial investments, it's critical, right? And with so much fraud, and we'll probably talk about this later, with so much fraud that's going on and the prevalence of AI getting really sophisticated, I need to know that I can trust you. Right, and trust, I think, becomes more important for the 50 plus. And what are the things that companies, financial institutions, and otherwise can do? One, insane transparency is one. Authenticity, right? Human touch, right? We can talk about a little bit more about that, having an actual human element, and then also protecting my security. Right? I don't want ID theft. I don't want anything to happen to my money. So that is becoming, to me, more center stage in the usability. I think we've crossed the Rubicon. Like, people get how to use it, and I think companies are getting better about making it easy. We do see that about 2/3 of older adults are doing digital banking and financial activities, and of those, 3/4 of them are on an app. So it's there. So now we got to make sure that they feel confident that I can trust this institution with my money.
And to that point, do you think that older consumers in particular are looking for a greater visibility of security? I mean, on one hand, we see broadly digital, but in particular financial institutions that are cautious around friction. They don't want to build in too much friction. They don't want to have too much stress in the process of customers completing those journeys. Yeah. But do we think that visibility of security is an important factor for the older consumer in particular?
Yes, for a couple of reasons. First of all, I just want to say that, we have an incredible fraud network here at AARP. And I talked to the lead of that, Kathy Stokes, a lot, and she's talked to me about the fact that younger people get frauded, if that's a verb, more often, but older people get taken for more because there is a larger, they have retirement accounts, right? So the amount they get taken for is more. So they are protective and cautious, and they're looking to make sure that that company is going to protect them. Yes, you want an elegant and an easy pathway to get there. But we actually did some research. We had the same exact theory issue. We did some research, and we found that multi-factor authentication was not a barrier. People actually wanted that. Again, giving them that extra layer of trust. You don't want to overcomplicate it, obviously. I'll speak as a Gen Xer. I'm always like, oh, multi-factor authentication. It's an extra step, but man, I'm glad I have it, so I know people aren't stealing my passwords, right? And I think as we see fraud continue to increase, people value that, and they know that they can trust this organization is going to be looking out for them. AARP actually has a really cool program that's called BankSafe. And we launched it in 2019. I love it. It is a program that trains banks and financial institutions to train their front line how to recognize when somebody might be under duress or under the influence of somebody who's trying to defraud them. Coming in, having somebody else talk for them, or asking for a large amount of money to be pulled out. So I think we've done about 1,500 institutions now. And help them to train their employees to do that. So I think, again, that transparency of knowing that this organization at a company is looking out for them and making sure that they're protecting their financial security is huge, even if it means an extra step.
You spoke about human support. Do you think that human support in the context of digital is empowering better digital experiences? And do you think that there is a need for more human support, or how do you see that balance playing out at the moment?
I think flexibility. I mean, we're in an age of personalization, right? So I think understanding that I can't speak for the entire 50 plus population, and neither can you, right? And you do research as well as like I do. I think people want to have the ability for both, right? I'm an N of one. I like to do everything digitally and go on and do it all digitally. But for something that requires complex decision making, it's good to know there's a person that I can call and talk about this. We see this with things like finance and banking. We see it with travel, with cruising. Cruising is tremendously complicated, a lot of variables. People want to pick up the phone and talk to somebody and know somebody's invested and that they truly understand, you know, what is it that you're trying to achieve here? Maybe a little bit better than a bot or digital might be able to provide. So I think the ability to have both. We do see that, you know, older consumers are definitely ditching things like landlines. You know, it's not that they're stuck in 1957, but we also still see that human touch being particularly important for our older consumers. And they want to be able to have a human interaction. And they might even just seek that out, you know, keep pressing 0 or representative, right? To be able to have that conversation. I'm actually curious, I have no data to support this, but I'm actually curious if we're not going to see a pendulum swing, right? So we've gone so far over, everybody's gone so far over into this digital world that I feel like we're going to start craving human interaction. You're here with me personally today. It's fantastic. You even said it's going to be better than if we do this, you know, over Teams or Outlook, right? And it is. It is, and I think that human element is so important in so many things that, who knows, that could actually reverberate into the broader zeitgeist, not just older consumers.
It is nice to have those human touch points these days, isn't it? I mean, we went through the pandemic and we were all so remote and so removed from each other.
Right?
And we're getting back to a degree of normality in that. It'll be interesting to see how the pendulum does swing. But to that point, and I suppose the topic of the moment, AI.
Yes.
What do you see as the pros and cons? Where do you see the pluses and minuses when it comes to AI for older people?
I mean, it's interesting. I see a lot of adoption from Gen X, a little bit less from Boomers, a little bit less from Gen Z, right? So I think that there are certainly benefits to it. I've seen great benefits in, for example, travel planning. I've seen great benefits in getting certain questions answered. I personally think we probably need to have a little bit of legislation, regulation around it. It's a little Wild West for me. We all know that AI can hallucinate a little bit. I mean, you're a researcher, I'm a researcher. I'll put things in, it'll spit something back to me. I'll be like, not exactly. And it's, oh, that's a great point, Carey. I'm like, I know, you should have caught it, right? So there are things that are not exactly right. So that gives me pause that, you know, potentially people are not necessarily getting the right information that they need. But we are seeing increases. I think it's doubled for travel planning amongst older consumers. My biggest concern is this fraud piece, though. It's getting extraordinarily sophisticated, right? And it's fooling people. And the amount, I think I'm going to get, hopefully I get this right. It is, I think, $12 billion in fraud is reported every year. But the estimate is that only about 2 to 6% of people actually report it. So we're looking at probably more like $200 billion in fraud. And one of the big issues with that is that people are just embarrassed and they don't want to admit, right? And again, talking to Kathy over in our Fraud Watch network, she said if somebody broke into your house, you wouldn't be embarrassed about that. This is the same thing. They're perpetrating a crime, but people feel like they've been taken advantage of. And again, it's getting so much more sophisticated. The letterheads, the misspellings are kind of going away. So I think that really gives me a lot of pause. But there are certainly some really cool things that can be done with it. And potentially, I'm interested to see what happens with financial planning and banking, just to see if it can help people at least start to map out. You know, can I pivot for a second, if you don't mind? I do worry about retirement and retirement planning. As a fellow Gen Xer, you and I were raised at a time by a generation that a lot of them had pensions, right? And they, worked for 40 years and got a gold watch and a pension. And I mean, AARP has pensions. It's amazing. It's the only company I've worked for that has a pension. Most companies do not. The 78 401k Act changed all of that. So you have this generation of people that didn't really learn how to save because their parents didn't have to save in the same way. I was doing a project. We have an age tech collaborative here. I used to be a part of it. It was called the Innovation Lab at that point, so it's evolved. But I was working on financial services as part of my job. And the number I had then, and your number might be more updated because you do this every day, but the number I had back then is that the average amount people had saved for retirement. Do you know what it is? Yeah, it was
Not off the top of my head, no.
$2,500, which is grossly not enough, right? But that's including a lot of people that don't have any money saved, right? When you looked at the people who had money saved, it was $150,000, still probably not enough to sustain you for 20 years. So you look at those numbers and you think, gosh, people aren't necessarily ready to retire. They're not identifying with retiring. So if AI can kind of help people feel like they have more of a handle on it, because it's a big, kind of complicated topic, I think that could be very valuable for folks to help them kind of get over that, maybe that fear of saying, I don't want to look at what I have and I just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Kind of a non-judgmental way. The AI is a bot, right? So.
Yeah, well, it certainly doesn't approve or disapprove of your decision making.
It usually says you're awesome, you're really smart, and you thought of everything.
But continuing on that theme around life stages or life events and planning, do you think that there are areas in which financial service providers, banks broadly, are doing better or worse when it comes to helping customers around the life planning, around making those decisions and getting a plan in place that's going to help them into the future, and in particular, of course, into older age?
Yeah, I mean, again, it really is, I think, about the retirement planning. But it's something that might be interesting or different than you may have heard in the past is, again, when I was working on this financial project in the Innovation Lab, Age Tech Collaborative, we did a series of projects with older women and financial planning, and they tended to be more in the boomer age group rather than Gen X. And I actually heard something kind of shocking when we were talking to them. These were women who were divorced or recently widowed and were taking over their own financial planning. And some of these women were saying things such as, when I was growing up, and again, they're a little older than us, Mark, when I was growing up, I was taught that math was for boys, and my husband would handle this for me. And that's different than the message I think we got growing up, is like, learn to manage your finances. But it gave me pause because I realized that financial institutions may not be thinking about you might be bringing people into the fold who haven't really been doing this. And how do you hit that sweet spot of welcoming them in and saying we can help you without talking down to them or over their heads, right? So ensuring, because the divorce rate is reasonably high amongst people over 50, right? It's one of the fastest growing divorce rates. So helping people who maybe historically hadn't even been having to think about it, I think is a great place for financial institutions to focus.
And if we go back to accessibility for a moment, we know that organizations, broadly speaking, will look at accessibility through regulatory sort of frameworks and thinking. Yeah. Do you think that we're seeing a shift in that? Do you think that there is more for us to do, digitally speaking, in bridging the divide when it comes to accessibility and doing more to help older customers get online and be comfortable getting online?
That's a really good question. At AARP, we have our tech program that helps people. So send them to aarp.org and maybe we can help them as well. I think it's plausible. I mean, you're seeing so much exploding in the financial space, so much community building, I think, is kind of an interesting place to go, and the ability for people to potentially, I think, learn in a low-risk, sort of welcoming environment. I think there's probably space for that. That could actually be a really interesting product. I don't want to bring up anybody in particular. My personal bank, though I will say, which I will not name, has wonderful programs and kind of a cafe, so read between the lines and you can go there and you can take programs and learn, and it's a very sort of welcoming community-based experience that I think allows people that space to learn, but then also on the back end for the businesses gives them the capability for amazing market research to see where people are struggling, what the barriers are, and where they can break down those barriers in order to make things more accessible and a little less daunting. Again, when I was doing this project at the lab, it was really around how do you get small businesses to have retirement savings plans, because 98% of our businesses in the U.S. are small businesses, and so many of them don't have it. And I used to say, look, if you're a small business owner, you are the HR person, you are the accountant, you are the salesperson, after a long day, I don't know if you want to come home and become an expert on 401k plans or IRAs. You probably want a glass of wine and maybe to watch Real Housewives or something just to kind of get your mind off of things. So being able to create tools that help people, small businesses and individuals, to be able to prepare for retirement, because people want to prepare. Most people don't identify with it anymore. A lot of people think they're never going to retire. But something could happen, sadly, something catastrophic, a health problem could force them to retire, and then they're not ready. So getting people past that scariness of, I haven't done anything yet, am I too late? And helping them just access it and feel comfortable with it and give them that confidence to continue to do that, I think would be huge.
So whether it's inside or outside of financial services, and whether it's an industry or a particular business or brand, where do you see providers that are doing a better job of servicing older customers in the broader context? Where do you see industries or individual businesses that are really demonstrating that next step, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, and I don't want to name names. We do have some providers on the AARP docket, right? So what I love about our we call them providers rather than partners. But those are the people that come in and they offer the discounts on the commercial side. And they have generally, and first of all, an interest in the 50 plus market. Yes, they want to tap into it. Right? It's big. And as I've said before, everybody needs a 50 plus strategy. They need a 50 plus strategy. Go read the longevity economy on AARP.org. I mean, it is fascinating. It's fantastic. So they have an interest. So I have varying levels of interest and intrigue. But the first step is saying, you know what? I want to reach this market. I don't think it's maybe what I thought it was, and I want your help, right? So we have experts on our team that can help them with this. But we have some that lean into it further. So we have done for financial institutions, we've done personas for them, right? Actually, when you say AI, I'm actually sort of fascinated with this idea of creating synthetic personas that we can query. But then, of course, researcher in me validate it on the back end with actual consumers. There's a real opportunity to have dialogues with people and understand what they need and putting the consumer in the center. And when you put the consumer in the center, my pedigree was Procter & Gamble, so we were always the consumer's boss when I was there. And if you start with the need of the consumer, everything else can come with it. It's not just, oh, you're this age, I think you need this. If you know what people want, 10 things nobody wants is the same as 0 things. If you know what they want, if you talk to them, and again, a lot of our providers that we work with, which you can find if you go to .org, are doing that, right? We create personas for them. We're doing research for them. And they're thinking about it. They're not necessarily just saying, oh, they're 50, they need X and Y and Z. It's not about what they need. It's not about what you want to give them. So the ones that are doing it right are putting the consumer in the middle of it and finding out what it is that they want and delivering that. And again, I think for so long, it's a market that's been ignored because people assumed their product decisions are set, right? But they're not. They're not. They're persuadable and trusting and demonstrating to them that you will protect them and that you are listening to them. That makes a huge difference. And also, if you have a human I can talk to, that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let me give you the magic wand for a moment. If you could fix or change anything, particularly in the financial services context, but again, even more broadly, what would the 3 wishes that you would like to impose be? Okay, you've got the genie, you've got the magic wand, you've got the choice. What would it be that you would want to see change in the next 3 to 5 years in terms of what we can be doing, in particular around the digital space?
I think the first thing is just making sure, do UAT testing, right, with the digital experience, right, with older people. And again, I've seen a lot of sites that are pretty clunky, and these are people that'll just opt out if it just gets too confusing. I've seen sites where the font contrast is imperceptible, you can't read it. There's a lot of complexity to it. It's jargony, again, hitting that sweet spot for, we want to help you, and we're not going to talk over you to sound smart. We're not going to talk under you to think that we think you're dumb. So allowing for that piece of it, recognizing how people view themselves, and again, the vast the vast swath, right? Everything from people that are in need and having difficulty from making ends meet to those people that want to buy the vineyard and the yacht, which we see a lot of that kind of stuff. Really kind of the realities all across the board. Going a level deeper than just an age category. Right? Think about all the variability. It's the same as the variability in the rest of the market. There's ethnicity and race and values and income and goals. So making sure that it's not just like a rubber stamp. This is my older product, right? So,
last question for today.
Yeah.
AARP, it's a great organization, a membership-based organization. Why are members coming to your organization? What are they getting? What are they valuing from your organization?
I can say as an employee, I was amazed with how vast this organization is. The things that we're involved in. Clearly, we're a social mission organization. We're fighting to protect Social Security. We're fighting to protect Medicare. We also have an absolutely amazing magazine, largest circulating magazine in the U.S., by the way, 35 million, because our members all receive it. It's fantastic, but they're also coming to us for not only advocacy, but the member benefits. We've got so many member benefits, including all of these discounts that I've been talking about. One of our top things people love is our travel benefits, right? The discounts on that, our insurance, our financial products. And the fact is we're constantly researching to see how things are evolving and what are new benefits that we want to keep continuing to bring to the fold. So the benefits, I think, are kind of the door in, but then people see all the other things that we offer and the things that we're fighting for. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great organization. I feel privileged to work here, quite honestly. It's great to be in social mission, and I love researching products and bringing new things to the market for them.
Understandably so, and so do we at RFI, of course, in researching and better understanding.
And you guys are a key part of how we get so smart on this category. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for that opportunity.
Yeah.
Carey, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise, Mark. Thanks so much for coming into town.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to meet, and keep up the good work at AARP.
Thank you. Likewise at RFI as well. So I'm sure we'll be in touch.
I'm sure we will.
All
Thanks
right.
again.
Thank you.